Hello, friends. Do you ever think about food? I know I do sometimes, and I have even gone so far as to make something of a study of diet and uh, sort of nutrition, proper. Yogananda coined the term proper eatarianism. It was his way of getting back at all the isms out there, and he kept it pretty simple. A simple diet suited to your constitution. End of story. The operative word being simple and the other operative word being suited to your constitution, which means actually suited to your constitution, not you kind of think it is and you like to eat what you like to eat and don't want anybody bothering you about it. But anyway, I'm going to do a little series on food and nutrition. Not that I'm a nutritionist and not that I'm your doctor or something like that, but because I've thought about this a little bit and done some research, it's brought up some interesting ideas that might be helpful for people. And the first of these is you have, those who have watched these videos in the past have occasionally heard me discuss and to some degree even promote the concept of plant-based diet, by which I'm not meaning fanaticism, but a predominantly or a directionally more plant-based diet is generally considered to be a good thing out in the world of nutrition. We're certainly seeing plant-based this, that, and the other thing coming out, some of which is complete nonsense because it's just highly processed in another way and it's not really any healthier than whatever it replaced. But in other cases, it's quite useful and quite helpful and quite good. So you will occasionally hear me talk about that, and I'd like to talk a little bit about it today, but I'm going to add a term that can go with that phrase, plant-based diet, and that is a whole food plant-based diet, because chocolate cookies and soft drinks can be considered plant-based, and they're not either of them necessarily all that healthy, whereas a whole food plant-based diet can be a lot healthier. And what is a whole food? A whole food just means that we take the whole thing. Someone once memorably observed that in the West, and in America in particular, we're always looking for what is the active ingredient in whatever it is, and so we're always trying to sort of dissect and get down to the cause of whatever it is. And surely it's the beta carotene in carrots that's the good stuff, that makes carrots good for you. And the observation was the active ingredient in broccoli is broccoli. And I've always liked that because it sort of removes that. It's basically saying, if you're going to eat broccoli, and use your own judgment. I think it's a good food. I think it's nutritious, and I think it's helpful. Maybe it works for your diet. Maybe it doesn't. Whatever. Life goes on. If it doesn't, I'm not going to get on my soapbox and promote broccoli particularly. But you can't, the idea of it is that it's the whole thing. It's not that, you take this and you process the chlorophyll out of it and that's what you eat. It's like, the concept is the whole piece, the whole flour, the whole whatever. And the same thing with a whole food diet is you try to keep whatever it is that you're eating more or less intact. This does not mean that you don't cook it. It doesn't mean that you don't chop it or blend it or do something to it. It just means you don't sort of destroy the concept of it as a concept. And that, I think, is helpful. And I'm going to share a couple of reasons why I think so, and research recently that I've read seems to support this. I read one study talking about how the body absorbs, when we have a whole food, a plant-based whole food, what happens is there's fiber with it. And often the nutrition is down in the cells, kind of behind a fibrous cell wall. And the body has to work at it to get at those nutrients, which is actually good for the body. It's good for the body in many ways, that the fiber sort of slows the whole process down. Blood sugar doesn't spike. Insulin response doesn't jump. There's a lot of bad things that don't happen and quite a number of good things that do happen. But here's another interesting part of this. And this is what I read recently that really struck me. We don't absorb all of those nutrients when they are plant-based. When they are whole food and we have to sort of work at it. Now you may think, oh, well, that doesn't sound like such a good thing. We're missing nutrients. And I suppose in the abstract that could be true. But here's the thing. Many foods that we don't get all the value out of. So for example, an almond has a lot of fat in it, has a lot of oil in it, which is vegetable fat. And when we eat a whole almond, as opposed to when we put almond oil on top of something or in something, we don't get as much of the oil out of it because the body has to make a choice. This is me talking. Nobody's corroborated this. Somebody can get in the comments and tell me I'm all wrong about this if they want and if they know. My guess is that the body has to compromise. It has to compromise between how much effort to put into extracting the nutrients from something and how much time it has to do so. Because we can't spend 2 days digesting one almond. It's like we have to sort of get on with the process and keep it moving. And so the body makes a judgment. I'm going to get this much out of what I just ate and the rest of it's going to move on. And when we do that as an organism, we're healthier. That's what it seems like based on what I've seen, what I've read and understood. And I'm going to go one step further than this, and this is where I'm going to get all philosophical on you. Think back to all the discussions that the guru, pick a guru, Sri Yukteswar talking to Yogananda, Yogananda talking to Swami Kriyananda. Swami Kriyananda, we'll sidestep the guru discussion, but just as a teacher, Swami Kriyananda discussing various points with us, or just putting us in situations where we had to figure something out. Yogananda also, I'm reflecting on a classic example. Yogananda was observing some people, he described it as violently reciting a chant. And he was silently critical of that. And Master Mahashaya came up to him and said, and they exchanged greetings, and Yogananda said, how come you here? How do you come to be here? And he said, Master Mahashaya, ignoring my question answered my thought. And, then they went on to discuss, isn't it sweet when someone's chanting the name of God? Whether they're ignorant or wise, it still sounds sweet. And what I got from that is he did not present Yogananda with a complete thought. I'm here because you are going into the ditch right now with your mentality. You oughtn't to think that way. He didn't say that. He instead sort of posed a challenge to Yogananda, and Yogananda himself came to understand. And so I'm going to go back to the diet or the food question. There's an almond in your tummy, and your tummy has to decide how much which nutrients am I going to get from that? And every situation in life, whether presented to us formally by some guru or just by life itself, it sort of does the same thing. It asks us, what will you make of me? What will you take from me? How will you understand me in your life and make use of me? How will you be nourished by me? And we have to choose. And in many cases, we have to compromise. We only have so much time to make a choice, and then the situation moves on, and we have to move with it. But consider that, and I'll just simply close by suggesting, meditate on that thought. Which whole foods do you consume in life? And I don't just mean on your plate or in your glass. I mean in your life. Which whole foods do you consume? And what do you make of them? What do you do with them? Because when life gives us challenging situations, they come to us with a lot of fiber. They come to us with certain barriers, certain energetic barriers, you could say, would be one way to say it. That's like the cell wall that has the nutrients behind it. We have to use energy to break through that cell wall to get to what's behind it, and then to take something from it. Meditate on what you take from what you get in life, and tell me what you think of it. Namaste.